Have you ever been lost in a forest so completely that it felt like the world itself had turned against you? A group of friends, Ethan, Claire, and Ryan, decided to hike along an old trail shrouded in legends, a forest where people vanished, where the trees whispered and shadows moved on their own. At first it seemed like a normal adventure. A light breeze rustled the leaves, the sun sank behind the horizon, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. But within half an hour, they noticed something strange. The trail twisted unnaturally, even though they were following the map. Footsteps echoed behind them, sounding human, yet every time they turned, no one was there. Claire shivered, claiming she felt a cold wind despite the air being warm, and the shadows of the trees seemed to thicken around them. The forest began to awaken. Roots twisted like hands reaching out of the ground. Branches creaked and coiled, whispering strange chants. Ethan, the leader, tried to calm his friends, but tension pressed against his chest. Every shadow looked alive. Every rustle sounded like steps from unseen creatures. Suddenly, they emerged onto a clearing shrouded in thick fog. Moonlight barely penetrated the mist. Strange silhouettes stood on the grass, tall, thin, and faceless. Ryan stepped forward, and the figures vanished, dissolving into the air. Hearts raced, breathing became ragged. Claire whispered that she could hear voices calling their names, emanating from the trees themselves. They tried to move forward, but the forest seemed to shift. Trees parted and closed again. Paths twisted. Familiar landmarks disappeared. Every step felt eternal, and sounds grew closer, though the forest appeared empty. Ethan noticed the fog thickening where they had just walked, and inside it, shadows seemed to slither, as if the forest itself was watching. On the next clearing, they found an old abandoned house. The walls were peeling, the roof nearly collapsed. Inside, the air was icy, and a draft whispered in a language none of them recognized. Old books lay on the floor. The ink was dried, yet the words were legible. They watch, they wait. The night is yours. Suddenly, the doors slammed shut, and the flashlights flickered. Shadows in the corners stretched, disappeared, and reappeared. Ryan tried to open a window. The glass was intact, but it reflected not the room, but a forest filled with moving silhouettes. The voices grew louder, calling their names in a tone that became increasingly sinister. They ran out of the house, determined to return to the car. But the forest was now alien. The trail vanished. Trees merged into an impenetrable wall. Each step was accompanied by snapping branches and whispers behind them. Claire screamed, but her voice dissolved into the dense fog. Ethan noticed movement in the distance, a tall, faceless creature watching them. The night stretched longer than possible. The fog thickened, footsteps grew closer, and the forest seemed to bend the laws of reality. Distances expanded, trails twisted, and familiar objects became unrecognizable silhouettes. At dawn, when the first light pierced the mist, they stumbled upon a small clearing with the ruins of an old chapel. But something had left tracks in the dirt, thin and elongated, leading deep into the forest where no one dared follow. No one ever heard their voices again. Legends say the forest chooses those who enter it and forever keeps a part of them in the fog. And now, the question is yours. If you were alone in this forest, where the trees whisper, shadows live their own lives, and footsteps follow you, would you survive? Or would the forest claim you forever?